Scorpions, tarantulas, rattlesnakes, cactuses, dirt, and weather hot enough to melt the taillights off your car. If this is even slightly close to what you think of when you think of Arizona, you might be wondering why so many people live in this desert state. Arizona as a state is the 14th largest state by population with about 7.4 million people, and just this year ranked as the 5th fastest growing state in the whole country. And the capital of Arizona, Phoenix, has a population of about 1.7 million people, making it the 5th largest city in the US by population. However, this same capital city made headlines recently for breaking its own heat record. Phoenix had 31 straight days of temperatures over 110 degrees and 3 days of brutal 119-degree temperatures, sending a record number of people to emergency rooms while melting cars and street signs. Furthermore, half of Arizona is considered to be semi-arid, while about a third of the state is completely arid. That means that altogether, over 80% of Arizona is semi-arid or drier. This makes Arizona the second driest state in the country, receiving only about 12.6 inches of rainfall each year. The desert is not only hot and dry, but there are dangerous creatures like rattlesnakes, poisonous scorpions, and tarantulas. Even the plants are dangerous, with one type of desert cacti having toxic sap that can cause serious skin irritation. So, with all this being said, why is this state still such a popular place to live? How did an area that's so inhospitable on the surface become so well inhabited? Well, today on Across the Globe, we're going to be looking at all the reasons why so many people live in Arizona. And to better understand this, let's first take a look at some of Arizona's population trends. Arizona's population didn't really begin to increase until the mid-1900s. In 1958, Arizona's population was a little under 1.2 million people. But by the time 2022 came around, that number had reached almost 7.4 million. Altogether, this means that between 1958 and 2022, Arizona's population increased over 516%. Compare that to the population increase of the US as a whole during that same time period, which was only about 91%, about 18% of what Arizona's population growth was. Clearly, there were some things that were happening in the mid-1900s onwards that led to Arizona's huge growth. So, before we get into the recent reasons why people live in Arizona, let's take a brief look at Arizona's history and why people started moving there in the first place. Before World War II began, Arizona's population was pretty small. In 1939, for instance, the year World War II started, the population of the state was only about 484,000. But by the end of the war in 1945, the population had increased almost 23% to approximately 594,000 people. This population increase wasn't a mere coincidence. World War II had a big impact on the number of people who lived in Arizona. There are a few reasons for why that happened. First, during the war, the US government established numerous military bases and defense installations in the state. This drew personnel to the area and, as a result, introduced the state to people who may never have been there before. Second, there were several industries based in Arizona that were key to the war effort. One of these was copper mining. Because Arizona has one of the biggest copper deposits in the world, copper mining here exploded during the war as the need for metal increased. Finally, the Hoover Dam, located between the border of Arizona and Nevada, played a key role in both the war effort and the population growth of the region. Established in 1936, the Hoover Dam provides the southwestern and western parts of the United States with water and electricity. During World War II, the dam powered key defense plants in California. To prevent it from becoming a wartime target, the US government amped up protection for it, and as a result, it's continued to thrive as an important supply of water for Arizona today. In addition to World War II's impact on the region, technological developments also played a key role in Arizona's growth, and one of these was the development of affordable air conditioning, possibly the most important part of life in the desert. While air conditioning was technically invented in 1902, it didn't become widespread until much later, mostly because of how expensive and bulky early air conditioning was. By the 1960s, air conditioning had become much more affordable, and most new homes had air conditioning installed. It was during this same time period that Arizona's population started exploding. With air conditioning now widely available, suddenly moving to and living comfortably in the desert was no problem. In Phoenix, this population increase was particularly pronounced. In 1940, for instance, the population of Phoenix was about 65,000. In 1950, that had increased to 106,000, and by 1960, right around when air conditioning started becoming more popular, the population of Phoenix had quadrupled from that earlier number. A final reason that explains Arizona's population increase in the mid to late 1900s was the boom of retirement communities. In 1954, the first age-restricted retirement community in the U.S. was developed in the town of Youngtown, which is a part of the Phoenix metropolitan area. By 1955, this community had become hugely popular, and suddenly it seemed like Arizona was the place to be for those 55 and older. In addition to Youngtown, Sun City, also a part of the Phoenix metropolitan area, became another major retirement community. Developed in 1960, Suntown became one of the biggest and longest-running retirement areas in the entire U.S. During the Sun City retirement community's opening weekend, for example, 100,000 people came to check it out. Considering that the population of Phoenix at the time was only about 558,000, that number is pretty significant. Within the first month of launching, 400 homes were sold. By the end of the first year, that number had reached 2,000 homes. This trend of retirees moving to Arizona has continued through the present day. Currently, Arizona has the second highest number of baby boomers in the country, only behind the state of Florida. Now that we've explored the history of Arizona's population growth, let's examine some of the modern-day factors driving its continued surge today. Number 1. Affordability. Arizona may have the 16th highest cost of living index out of all other states in the country, but when we compare it to comparable states or other states with big cities that people are moving to, it's actually one of the more affordable places to live. For instance, as I mentioned earlier, Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the U.S. When we compare other states that host some of America's largest cities like New York and California, Arizona has a significantly lower cost of living index of 107.2 compared to California's 134.5 and New York's 125.1. A large part of this is due to the fact that Arizona, relative to many other popular states, has more affordable real estate. In fact, out of WalletHub's list of 300 of the most affordable cities in the U.S. for home buyers, 2 of the top 15 are cities in Arizona. WalletHub similarly ranked U.S. cities for first-time homeowners, and 3 of these top 15 cities were located in Arizona. When we look specifically at Phoenix, the numbers become even more clear. According to Zillow, Phoenix has an average home value of about $412,000. Compared to the U.S.'s other large cities, which include New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Houston, this is a relatively affordable option. New York, for instance, has an average home value of $716,000. For Los Angeles, that number is $908,000, while Chicago and Houston are more affordable overall than Phoenix at average home values of $291,000 and $262,000 respectively. What this makes clear is that Phoenix is still a competitive place to live in terms of affordability. Number 2. Education. Another reason people have continued moving to Arizona over the years has to do with Arizona's education opportunities. No, I'm not talking about the quality of its kindergarten classrooms. I'm talking about its universities. Specifically, Arizona State University and the University of Arizona are 2 of the largest universities in the entire country. ASU has a student body of over 57,000, and the University of Arizona has over 51,000 students. Historically, many of these students have stayed in the area after graduation. One report, for instance, found that between 2000 and 2014, 60% of ASU graduates and 19% of University of Arizona graduates stayed in the Phoenix area. Furthermore, 70% of those from ASU and 56% of those from the University of Arizona stayed in the state of Arizona following graduation. As a result, these huge educational centers are not only drawing large amounts of students to the state temporarily, they're actually pulling people there permanently. As you can imagine, this has also played a role in Arizona's growth. Number 3. Natural environment. For many, Arizona has the perfect natural environment. I know. This might sound contradictory to what I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but stick with me. Despite Arizona having brutally hot summers, the rest of the year is surprisingly pleasant. And as I mentioned earlier, with the invention of air conditioning, summers in Arizona have become tolerable, even if they might not be comfortable. But if we're setting summers aside, Arizona actually has some pretty desirable weather. For starters, the state gets a ton of sun and is hugely appealing for those looking to flee the rain, clouds, and snow found in other states. Phoenix, for instance, gets an average of 300 sunny days each year, which is over 83% of the year. And southwest of Phoenix, the city of Yuma gets over 320 sunny days each year. Furthermore, the weather in the fall, winter, and spring can be pretty temperate. Phoenix's average high in January, for instance, is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The spring months see temperatures in the upper 70s, and as we saw earlier, the sun is out even through the winter. This weather means that people who live here can take advantage of all the outdoor amenities that Arizona has to offer practically year-round. This is also great given Arizona has the 5th highest number of national parks in the country, with a total of 3 national parks. These are the Petrified Forest National Park, Saguaro National Park, and of course, Grand Canyon National Park. In addition, Arizona has a total of 29 state parks, meaning that there are opportunities to enjoy Arizona's incredible and varied topography no matter where you live within the state. What about why 80% of people live in the eastern half of the US? Watch this video to learn about that.